Hello, lovely listeners. I'm Julia, who will help you relax and fall asleep tonight. What time is it for you right now, and what's on your mind right now? Write it in the comments. In a kingdom unlike any other in the annals of time, there reigned a wealthy and proud monarch named King Midas. His palace, resplendent with rare jewels and treasures beyond imagination, had long stood as a testament to his unyielding desire for power and opulence. Every corridor shimmered with the brilliance of precious metals, and every step echoed the sound of coins clinking, a constant reminder of the great fortunes he had amassed over decades. Yet, within the heart of the illustrious king burned an insatiable greed and an equally scorching vanity, driving him to seek that which no mortal had ever possessed, the ultimate alchemy of transformation. Midas believed that by turning everything he touched into brilliant, radiant gold, he could immortalize his splendor and secure his legacy as a being of unrivaled magnificence. Amidst the lavish halls and glittering banquets of his realm, whispers of magic and mystery began to stir. The servants spoke in hushed tones of strange apparitions and ethereal visitors that graced the opulent corridors at twilight. Among these tales, one story eclipsed the rest. A story of a mysterious elf known only as Goldie, whose presence heralded wonders and curses in equal measure. It was said that Goldie possessed secrets of an ancient magic that could alter the very essence of life. Though many doubted the truth of these accounts, they could not ignore the eerie certainty that Goldie existed, lurking at the edge of mortal comprehension. One balmy evening, as the sun dipped behind the palace turrets in a cascade of oranges and pinks, King Midas stood alone in his tranquil garden. As he admired the myriad blossoms and intricate pathways laid with cobblestones, his thoughts invariably drifted to his deepest yearning, to possess the power to transmute every object he encountered into the purest gold. In a moment of profound self-indulgence, he declared aloud, "Oh, that I may have the power to turn all to gold, to leave behind a trail of shimmering brilliance wherever I tread." His words, rich with desire and arrogance, carried into the darkness like a tempting beacon. It was at that very moment that the atmosphere around him began to shimmer with a sudden otherworldly glow. From the depths of the garden's shadows, a figure emerged, a lithe and graceful creature with eyes that sparkled like flecks of stardust and hair that flowed like liquid silver. The being, an elf of such enchanting beauty and mystique, regarded the king with a mixture of amusement and forewarning. "King Midas," the elf intoned in a voice as mellifluous as a nightingale's song, "I am Goldie, and I have come bearing the gift you so earnestly desire, the golden touch." Goldie stepped forward with a slight smile and with a fluid motion of slender fingers demonstrated the power bestowed upon him by the ancient magics. In a blink of an eye, Midas's beloved pet cat, a creature of soft purrs and gentle demeanor, was transformed into a solid figure of gold, its every detail captured with eerie precision. The garden fell silent as King Midas stared at the glittering form of his pet, his mind ablaze with conflicting emotions. For a fleeting moment, wonder and terror danced together in his eyes as he contemplated the scope of such power. The gentle rustle of the leaves and the soft sighs of the twilight seemed to murmur warnings that would soon haunt his every thought. Little did he know that this moment of magic would mark the beginning of a profound transformation in his destiny. Thus, fate beckoned. Still reeling from the astounding display of magic, King Midas's heart raced with both exhilaration and uncertainty. He took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the shimmering golden figure of his beloved cat. The miraculous transformation instilled in him a wild ambition, and he could already envisage that his dreams of eternal prosperity were within his grasp. With newfound confidence, Midas raised his voice, addressing the enigmatic elf. "Goldie, I do not seek trifles or half measures. I wish to command this power for all of creation. Bestow upon me the golden touch, so that I might turn every morsel and object in my realm into dazzling gold." Goldie's eyes softened with a quiet sorrow, as if burdened by memories of past lords who had perished under the weight of their greedy desires. "King Midas," Goldie replied softly, "this is no mere gift to be taken lightly. The magic I offer is profound, and its consequences are as unpredictable as they are irreversible. Consider well what you truly value, for even the grandeur of gold cannot mend the emptiness of a soul left barren by its pursuit." Midas scoffed at the elf's words, dismissing them as the cautious ramblings of a being unaccustomed to ambition. "Fiddlesticks! Give me gold, not idle counsel," he bellowed with scorn, his voice echoing off the marble columns and silken drapes of his palace. His demand was as abrupt as it was defiant, and in that moment the air seemed to tremble with the intensity of his desire. Goldie, with a resigned tilt of the head and a deep sigh that resonated with ancient wisdom, reached into the folds of his ethereal cloak and produced a small, radiant vial filled with a shimmering liquid that glowed like molten sunlight. "So be it," Goldie murmured. "I shall grant you the golden touch, but heed this warning. All that you hold dear, and all the world that you have built, shall be altered irreversibly by this power." Before Midas could protest, Goldie waved his hand in a graceful arc, and the magic was sealed in an invisible pact between divine decree and mortal desire. The moment was charged with a palpable tension that seemed to suspend time itself. Midas felt an electric thrill surge through his veins as the power of the transformation flowed into him, mingling with his very essence. The power was intoxicating. It whispered promises of endless wealth and glory. "At last," he exclaimed in a jubilant tone, "I am invincible." The elf's gaze held a mix of pity and resolve as Midas, now throbbing with the raw energy of his new gift, turned to examine his surroundings. With shaking hands, he reached out toward a nearby rosebush, its vibrant petals the color of a summer sunset. The instant his fingertips brushed the delicate bloom, the flower burst into a cascade of gleaming gold, each petal transformed into a lustrous, unyielding metal. Midas laughed heartily, his laughter echoing off the opulent walls of the enchanted garden. "Imagine," he mused aloud, "if every flower, every tree, every stone could be as rich and splendid as this." Enthralled by the immediate results of his wish, The king traversed his gardens, palace halls, and even the smallest details of his realm, gleefully turning all into a dazzling display of gold. The fountains, the statues, the courtyards, and even the pebbles underfoot became manifestations of his unbridled desire. Each transformation served as both a triumph and a testament to his vanity. Yet, amid the exultation and the brilliant glimmer of his creations, a subtle disquiet began to take root in his mind, though he quickly dismissed it as the fleeting shadow of a guilty conscience. The night drew on, and as the moon ascended, King Midas retired to his private chamber to inspect his reflection. Before him stood a magnificent mirror, one that had long been his confidant and silent judge. With trembling excitement, he raised his hand toward the reflective surface, already anticipating the marvel that was to come. "With this touch, I shall conquer the cosmos," he whispered with fervor, his eyes glittering with ambition. "The earth, the heavens, all shall be mine in golden magnificence." In that instant, his golden fingers met the cold surface of the mirror, and for a second, time seemed to hold its breath. The reflection that gazed back at him was almost beyond belief, a dazzling visage bathed in gold, each feature shimmering with an unnatural brilliance. Yet, as the seconds passed, Midas's fervor began to wane. His eyes darted to the table where a sumptuous feast had been prepared for his evening repast, and he noticed something most unsettling. The succulent roast, the vibrant vegetables, and the rich wines had all taken on the identical hue of the gold that now defined him. His stomach churned with a growing dread. Standing before the mirror, Midas felt both triumphant and troubled. He reached out to touch a goblet resting on an ornate table, and as his fingers made contact, the goblet instantly transformed into solid gold. A shiver ran down his spine, and his mind raced with thoughts of the permanence of his wish. Despite his earlier exhilaration, a small voice in his heart whispered that this magic was not as benign as it seemed. "What have I done?" he murmured to himself, his tone laced with desperation. The lavish hall, once alive with vibrant chatter and the soft rustling of silk garments, now stood eerily silent. Every surface shimmered with an inescapable radiance that was both beautiful and foreboding. In that quiet moment, Midas realized that his every desire, his every dream of grandeur, had been irrevocably altered by an invisible, binding force of destiny. Tormented by the duality of his fortune, a treasure intertwined with a curse, Midas lingered in the corridors of his mind, haunted by visions of what his golden touch might ultimately claim. He recalled the fleeting moments of delight when objects shimmered into existence at his mere behest, and the equally fleeting moments of despair when he realized that life's simple pleasures were now out of reach. The once comforting routine of his daily sustenance had turned into an ordeal of painful necessity. Midas attempted to console himself with the thought that perhaps, in time, a remedy could be found. But every attempt to reclaim what was once ordinary only deepened the hollow silence that now pervaded his existence. The opulence that had been his pride had become his profound lament, and as he wandered through his golden prison, the weight of his folly pressed upon him with every step. In a final bid to reclaim his former life, Midas slumped into a secluded alcove, his mind a tumult of regret and longing. He vowed, though his voice was barely audible, to seek a way to reverse the irreversible, a means to break free from the glittering shackle that had ensnared him. With each passing moment, as the golden sheen of everything around him served as an unrelenting reminder of his misjudgment, the true cost of vanity became ever clearer. The man who once ruled with authority now existed in a gilded solitude, burdened by his own desire for splendor. Yet, in the loneliness of his golden realm, a spark of hope lingered, a hope that redemption might someday mend his shattered heart. He yearned for a second chance. Horror and despair clutched King Midas as the reality of his cursed gift became undeniably apparent. Having reveled in his ability to metamorphose every object into dazzling gold, he now faced the cruel consequences of his wish. It began subtly at first. The transformation seemed merely superficial, a change in appearance that did not impede the use of his treasured possessions. However, the true horror unveiled itself when he attempted to partake in the most basic acts of nourishment. Sitting at a lavish table set for a grand feast, Midas eagerly reached for a platter of succulent food, only to have his touch transmute every bite into an inedible, glittering mass of metal. His attempts to drink from a crystal goblet yielded nothing but a cold, solid fixture where liquid once flowed, and the comforting warmth of a meal was replaced by the chill of lifeless gold. Panicking, Midas stumbled through the grand halls of his palace, his every desperate movement accompanied by the eerie sound of clanging metal. The intricate corridors, once symbols of his prosperity and pride, now reverberated with a sound that foretold his impending doom. As he ran, the echo of his footsteps merged with the uncanny chime of his cursed touch, creating a macabre symphony that underscored the gravity of his plight. In a moment of raw terror, he caught sight of his own reflection in an ornate mirror hanging in the hall. There, staring back at him, was not the vibrant, living man he once was, but a twisted, golden skeleton. The image was suffused with an agonizing irony. The richest king in all the world, now confronted by the very emptiness that his greed had wrought. Driven by fear and desperation, Midas sought refuge in the sanctuary of his secret counting room, a chamber where the weight of his golden treasures once filled him with pride. But now, each step towards this refuge was filled with dread. As he approached the heavy oak door, he noticed an otherworldly change. His own shadow, cast by the flickering light of golden torches, had morphed into a dark, sinister figure. It stretched behind him like a harbinger of death, taking on the ominous guise of a golden grim reaper. This spectral vision sent a shudder through his soul, and panic overpowered his once unwavering resolve. With a heart pounding like the frantic beats of an enraged drum, Midas bolted away from the castle, his golden form rustling through the ornate corridors of his doomed kingdom. The brilliant radiance of his touch now felt like a prison, trapping him within a world that had turned against him. Every polished surface, every glint of reflective metal, was a stark reminder of the curse he had so rashly embraced. In his wild flight, the once magnificent palace morphed into a labyrinth of blinding luminescence and despair, with each corner holding a mirror of his own vanity. Desperate and broken, Midas finally slowed his escape and sought refuge in the depths of a secluded chamber, hidden away from the prying eyes of his enchanted courtiers. Trembling and disoriented, he sank to the cold stone floor, his mind racing with thoughts of a life ruined by avarice. "Is the richest king in all the world to starve to death?" he cried out, his voice echoing eerily among the empty halls. In that moment of anguished solitude, he stared into a tarnished mirror, only to see his reflection twist into a grim golden specter, a skeletal visage that nodded in macabre agreement to his despair. Desperation surged as Midas struggled to reconcile with his fate. Every step he took was laden with regret, each footfall echoing through corridors turned into endless passages of golden misery. The dazzling, unyielding light of his transformation now mocked him, reflecting back a visage that was once full of life, but now hollowed by his own ambition. Memories of laughter and warmth were replaced by the cold clink of hard metal with every tap of his hand. The castle, his cherished home, had become a prison of glittering walls that closed in around him with relentless severity. In the midst of this despair, the king's thoughts turned to the legend of the Golden Touch. He recalled Goldie's solemn warning and wondered if the magic might someday be undone. Was there any chance to reverse this curse, to restore the natural order that had been so cruelly disrupted? A desperate idea began to form in his troubled mind. If he could abandon the life of unbridled extravagance, perhaps the golden curse would lose its hold. The notion seemed as fragile as a spider's web in the wind, yet it was the sole ember of hope that he clung to amid the overwhelming opulence. With each passing moment, Midas felt the burden of every golden artifact intensify, as if the very air shimmered with the sparkles of everything he had touched. The opulent corridors sparkled with a harsh light, each glittering surface whispering the tale of a man undone by his own desire. His heart ached with the realization that the fortune he had so covetously amassed was now nothing more than a gilded cage. Determined to reclaim a semblance of his lost self, Midas resolved, in quiet misery, to seek the elusive remedy that could break this spell. With a final, lingering look at the golden remnants of his past life, he set forth into the unknown, a solitary figure driven by a spark of redemption. Every clamor of metal, every fleeting glint of light, spurred him onward toward the promise of a second chance and the hope for a future free from gold. Thus, armed with a fragile hope and burdened by the weight of his golden legacy, he stepped into the darkness of an uncertain future. With his world turned into a glittering trap, King Midas found himself at the very edge of despair. The lavish halls, once echoing with the music of wealth and prosperity, had become tombs of his own making. As hunger gnawed at him and desperation clawed at his sanity, Midas realized that the golden transformation had not only robbed him of life's simple pleasures, but had also sealed his doom. He could no longer savor a meal or quench his thirst. Every object of sustenance had become a lifeless, unyielding mass of gold. The realization struck him with the weight of 1,000 regrets, and tears welled in his eyes as he contemplated the self-inflicted prison of his greed. In that moment of utmost desperation, Midas summoned the spectral memory of Goldie, the enigmatic elf who had warned him of the curse inherent in the golden touch. With trembling hands and a voice choked by anguish, he cried out into the empty corridors of his palace, "Take away this golden curse. Don't let me starve. Take everything, my gold, my kingdom, everything, if it means I can have a simple hamburger sandwich." His plea, both absurd and poignant, rang with the finality of a man whose fortune had become his undoing. The air seemed to still, as if time itself paused to listen to the desperate king's cry. In response, a soft, ethereal glow began to fill the chamber. From the depths of this luminous aura, Goldie appeared once more, his eyes reflecting both compassion and resolve. "King Midas," the elf intoned gently, "I will take back the golden touch, but on one condition: you must relinquish everything you hold dear. Your palace, your riches, even your crown shall be forsaken. All that remains will be what is essential, the delicate remnant of your undergarments." Midas, overcome with relief and a touch of bitter irony, nodded silently as tears of gratitude and sorrow mingled on his face. True to his word, Goldie extended his slender hand and, with a graceful snap of his fingers, undid the curse that had transformed every object into lifeless gold. The palace, the lavish treasures, and even the garb upon Midas's form vanished, replaced by a humble attire and the bare, intimate vestiges of what once marked a king. In the quiet that followed, as the golden veneer faded away, Goldie produced from his shimmering cloak the object upon which Midas had so long dreamed, the hamburger sandwich. Midas, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and heartfelt relief, scrutinized the humble hamburger sandwich. It was a simple meal, adorned with fresh, pungent onions that released a savory aroma reminiscent of days when food was celebrated, not cursed by a king's touch. With a tremor of renewed life, he took a bite. The taste was transformative, a reinstatement of his humanity and a repudiation of the cold curse that had once turned every desire into desolation. Each bite rekindled memories of joy, each chew a step back to a life worth living. In that humble act of savoring a meal, the former king rediscovered a truth that no amount of gold could ever bestow: the simple, irreplaceable pleasure of living. With each morsel, he felt the heavy chains of his past wealth dissolve into the ether. A serene smile slowly replaced his despair, and the taste of life, seasoned with onions, filled the void left by vanity and greed. Freed at last from the cursed guild of gold, Midas stood amidst the ruins of his former empire, feeling the cool, gentle embrace of a life reclaimed. No longer burdened by the weight of touch that turned all to lifeless metal, he took slow, deliberate steps forward into a world that had shed its glittering facade. The silence of the palace now whispered stories of redemption and second chances, as the echoes of his past self faded into mere memories. In that quiet moment, he realized that true wealth was not measured by the shimmering value of gold, but by the simple joys that filled the heart: warm laughter, genuine love, and the humble pleasures of everyday existence. The ornate trappings of royalty, once symbols of his ambition, were now replaced by the honest comfort of modest living. With each footstep, Midas felt the chill of solitude give way to a tentative warmth, as if the very air was offering him solace. He wandered through the empty halls, where every corner and forgotten corridor spoke silently of both loss and hope. The transformation was not only external. Within him, the heavy layers of greed and vanity began to peel away, revealing a fragile, human soul yearning for renewal. In the face of his downfall, he experienced a profound epiphany that the relentless pursuit of wealth had blinded him to the exquisite beauty of imperfect life. As the minutes turned to hours, and the shadows of his past receded into the light of a newfound dawn, he embraced his reality with quiet, resilient grace. He opened his arms to the possibilities ahead, grateful for the chance to rebuild his life on terms that celebrated genuine experience over the cold permanence of wealth. The memories of his past extravagance, though laden with sorrow, became lessons etched deeply into the lines of his weathered face. Each measured step became a journey from the gilded cage of obsession to open expanses filled with the promise of life reawakened. In that journey, he discovered that a simple meal could rival the grandest treasure, and that the touch of genuine care was more precious than all the gold amassed in vanity. Thus, with a heart unburdened and a spirit revived, he resolved to cherish every fleeting moment, to savor the beauty of life unshadowed by regret. He stepped forward into a future that, while uncertain, promised the chance to redefine wealth as the richness of human connection, creativity, and simple joys. Embracing this new vision, Midas embarked on a modest journey of rediscovery, hopeful for every tomorrow. Sweet dreams, good night.